Hello, everyone. Welcome to Red Songbird Foundation's Let the Journey Begin. My name is Hilary Roberts, alongside my amazing co-host, Jason Waller.
You guys, we have created this podcast to hear the incredible journeys of people that struggle with substance abuse, mental health, and trauma. We have created the most safe and trusted environment for these individuals to share their stories. Let's let the journey begin.
Welcome back, everyone, to Let the Journey Begin. I am your host, Hilary Roberts, alongside my long-lost co-host, Jason Waller.
What up, Hill? So good to be back. So good to see you. So good to see you too, Ryan. You're like, I used to see you all the time. Now I don't see you anymore, bro. No, things are going good. Things are going really well, and grateful to be back on here and connect with you guys. What have you been up to, Hill? How's everything going with you?
Well, I went last week. My mentor celebrated 45 years sober, and a bunch of people flew in to celebrate her, and it was just beautiful. And so I was glad to get some time with her on my own. Before that, her and her husband Dave, who's like a spiritual dad for me, and that was lovely. But I got to tell you, so just to come back to you. Your tone, your face, like everything has calmed down on you, like your whole vibe. Like I can tell that you are feeling so, even though you're not settled all the way yet, I can feel your being in Nashville.
I appreciate that. And it's funny that you say that because I've had that from multiple people. And it's nice to hear that when you're not looking, or you're not trying to feed for that type of compliment or, trying to rely on why it is that you move to try to accomplish that. It's nice to have people be able to witness that and to be able to see that. I mean, especially under the midst of some of the most crazy and chaotic times, with moving across the country and having a little family and getting kids situated and getting situated in a new place. But it comes back to, and I think we briefly touched on this last time, is just really enjoying the process and letting go and trusting in God that everything's going to happen on its time, not my time, and to let control of that and to really just embrace this time that I have with my family. And that's, why I moved out here, was to be able to slow my life down and to not be so engaged with the rat race and to really take that level of awareness and presence within my family to a new level. And it's pretty amazing. It's nice to see on the weekends that I literally don't have stuff on my schedule, and just to really have time with the kids and the family. I don't really get back to people on the weekends, and I've set new boundaries and what's best for myself. And it's easy. We talk about it all the time, and it's easy to talk about it, but it's one other thing to do when you move with your feet and do some action towards it, and the real benefit that comes from it, because it's been a long time coming. I've been talking about this for years, been threatening to change my lifestyle. I didn't think it was going to be having to move across the country, but all those necessary steps were happening to get to where I'm at mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And I'm really grateful and just in a good place with where I'm at today. But
so I wanted to, there's one other thing that I want to ask of you later when you do have time, and for our listeners, that my brother shared with me something special that happened to him this weekend. And so maybe later on we can have a little, it's an intimate thing that happened for you and with your spiritual experience. And I'd love to talk about, because we haven't interviewed you in a while, and I want to be able to let people hear part of your journey. And I just get all choked up because I think about how you were struggling and just what God is doing for you. So it's just, I want to put that out there right now, because it's just beautiful when you were sharing with me this weekend about that. So everybody look forward to an interview coming up with Jay, because I'm hoping that you'll share about that experience.
Yeah, no, that would be amazing. God worked in my life like I never experienced before. And so we'll definitely share that. And we got a lot of good stuff coming up on the foundation side. We got our Vegas event coming up here next week, which will be awesome. We have such a amazing group of people that work with the foundation. They're actually hosting us an event out there, and we're going to try to raise more funds to continue doing the work that we're doing and supporting those that are less fortunate and need help. But without further ado, Hilary, I know we got a special guest on here, and why don't you bring him on?
Okay. This is a friend of mine that I've known for a very long time, and I'd like to welcome life and business development coach and founder of Bring the Light Ministries, Pastor Earl Fitzsimmons. Hey, Earl.
How you doing? It's good to finally be on the show.
Oh, man.
And it's an honor and a privilege. And it's just, you have awesome timing, because this is just a great time for us to get together and talk about what God is doing.
Oh, I'm so excited. So I'm going to let Jason ask you the most intense question that we ask.
It is. Earl, nice to meet you, brother. Thank you for coming on the show. Looking forward to getting to know you, man. And so I want to know, what is it that you wanted to be when you grew up?
Well, I'm kind of doing it right now. So I just always wanted to be in that position where I could help somebody. I bided my time in the corporate world, and I was never really happy, but I just really wanted to be that, that guy that went out and helped everybody. Being a pastor and a founder of a homeless ministry that's totally independent, and being able to go out and do what most people don't do, or most organizations don't do, and help the very least of the people in our society is it's just a great life. Nobody lives better than me. I don't care how much money they have or what they're doing, but nobody lives better than my wife and myself. You
had to go through some tremendous trials and tribulations, would be my guess, to get you to where you're at today. And I'd love to know, going back to when you were younger, kind of what was your childhood like, and what was your first interaction or connection with substances, and where did it go from there?
Sure. So as bookends, I was born in 1963, so I'm 58 years old. Okay. Really good, solid, middle class to lower middle class family, well educated. My parents were the ones that sacrificed everything, holes in the carpets, my father wearing the same suits, working in the corporate world so that his kids could go to the Catholic school, private education and everything. So there wasn't any trouble in that regard. But there was trouble with me in that I was kind of the kid that just never felt in the right place at the right time, or I always felt less than. So my first foray into partying was, I was 14 years old, and we were at just a big party, and I took a couple swigs, and the next thing I know, it was like 10 days later, and I lived a 4 or 5 day blackout and couldn't stop drinking, which is indicative of the most classic form of alcoholism that anybody could have, meaning a 14-year-old who is relatively well-adjusted, who can't stop drinking for 10 days. That's a disease, And,
wow. So it sounds like you drank alcoholically, like myself, from the time that you started.
From drink one.
Wow.
Absolutely. From drink one. I remember I was at a group of people who were sober, and somebody whipped off something about, controlling their drinking or whatever. And I kind of laughed. I was like, why would you want to do that?
Right.
That's my mindset. To me, it was always putting off my partying or drinking until I didn't have to worry about it. I had a little bit of a studio career singing in my 20s out in Los Angeles, because I'd studied classical voice for 11 years. And
wow.
People loved working with me because I didn't party until after the job was done. I had a little nickname. It was called Two Take, because I may have had a C- voice, but I had great chops, meaning I was a music major. So I could go in there, do my takes, get done, and then, off the rails, meaning it was a plan that you were going to have to pour Earl into a cab. We had cabs back in those days, no Ubers. And it was just part of the plan, meaning I planned my life around when my drinking was going to happen. I sobered up a little bit in my 30s, bad marriage. I chose poorly. And then when there were some events that made me want to leave the marriage, I did. And I literally, leaving Las Vegas, checked into a hotel, sold everything I had, and was planning on getting high and drinking myself until I died.
Wow.
So that was like 18 years ago. Yeah. So that was 40 years old. And then in 05, had a little bit of a ruckus, wound up naked and beaten with my throat slit and my hand almost cut off, bleeding
What
to
happened?
death in a hotel room. And it was just one of those things, wrong place, wrong time with the wrong people. Things went down, words were said. I whipped off some arrogant, flippant comment like over my dead body, and they said, not a problem. And bam, that's what happened.
Wow.
Looking back though, like when you're stating, and I think all of us can relate to the, drinking like an alcoholic, kind of in our first few experiences with that. But is there some family history with alcoholism, or was there something that happened or that was underlying to set it off to such a degree?
There was always a sect of my family that were heavy drinkers. Only the person themselves can actually make the classic diagnosis of whether they're an alcoholic. But I certainly grew up around, there was a good 20% of my family that were like intense heavy drinkers.
And so, and when and just for our audience, when you say, basically an individual themselves can only make that acknowledgement of themselves being an alcoholic, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, sure. It's got to be. You can look at the symptoms of drinking alcoholically, but however, I know a bunch of people that it would appear that they would be drinking alcoholically, but they can just stop at a moment's notice. And they won't have any cravings, or they won't be going on sprees. All of the things that a typical alcoholic will manifest in their behavior, they won't have that. So we can always say, well, I think you may have an issue, or I think you may be an alcoholic, but the only person who knows what's going on inside their head in the cycle of addiction is the alcoholic themselves.
No, and I think it's good for us to just touch on that, because a lot of people, love to self-diagnose or give diagnoses to others. And so just have formulation around that is good context. So again, going back to the family history though. So, there was family that obviously may or may not have struggled with it, but was there a triggering event then that occurred for yourself?
It was a high school party. It was just, I wanted to be one of the guys. They were passing around a bottle of Jack, and I just wanted to be part of the party, sitting around a campfire in somebody's backyard, or I think it was a wrestling team event. And like I said, it wasn't that I was miserable or anything. It was just your average, ordinary party, and it just lit the flame.
So during that time, though, there wasn't like a sense of wanting to try to fit in, or was there underlying issues though that were percolating? Have you been able to dig deep and look back at that?
Yeah. Okay. So I was the very essence of a gentle child in a sports athletic dominated culture down here in Dallas, Texas. But I was a musician. I was a fine arts musician on top of that. So when you talk about not fitting in, well, yeah, that was a very life problem that I was experiencing. Everybody would be quoting stats from the Cowboy games, and I would be able to tell you who was singing at the Met in New York.
Right.
My father used to give me a good hard time because, back in those days when you had the record players with the little, arm and you could stack LPs, I would have Kiss, I would have some country music, Doobie Brothers, Luciano Pavarotti, and West Side Story, So I was all over the map.
Yeah.
And what does that, when I was going to an all-guys school here in Dallas, Texas, fine school, you just don't fit in the 1970s being a fine arts guy at 14 years old in Dallas, Texas. It just doesn't happen. It's a different world today.
So let me ask you this. So going back to when you were beaten so severely, was that your last time?
Well, I had a couple minor relapses after that. We would go from 2-3 weeks, and then it eventually would just go down, and I'd get more and more time. And
were you part of a support group at that time?
Oh, I definitely was deeply rooted in the recovery community in all dimensions.
Okay.
So,
did you go to treatment?
I did. They threw me out of treatment. And it wasn't for the reason that you think, but my arm, I had gone straight from Parkland to treatment, and my arm, they didn't have the medical care staff that a treatment center possibly should have. I'm not going to throw any stones, but it had developed gangrene. And so they literally put all my stuff in a black garbage bag and dropped me off of the emergency room at Parkland.
Oh man, was that from shooting up? Just asking.
No. It was just from a little bit of the suture didn't catch or whatever, so it just got infected because I wasn't getting proper wound care. So,
oh man, okay.
But of course, the family thought that I was, got thrown out for different reasons and everything, and so my last drink and drug was October 31st, 2006.
Oh wow,
and
Halloween.
So awesome, dude!
Yeah. So, and I think one of the key things for me, and I would speak to anybody in recovery, I'm not saying this is the way it's got to be, but something sickening, something snapped inside me that like, I got to give this up. I had kind of like the bad of bad days. I hadn't seen any of my recovery people in about a week. And so I just called my dealer, checked into the hotel, and, partied my what off for about 12 hours. And then I was just like, something snapped inside me, meaning I just can't do this. So here for me, this was the big deal. I took what I had and I flushed it down the toilet and I poured it down the toilet and just collapsed on the bed and woke up on the 31st, and that was it. So for me,
wow,
I had always either gotten arrested or ran out or something had stopped me. But this time it was, I walked away from it. Like,
wow,
I flushed it, poured it.
That was your moment of clarity.
That was my moment.
Wow, that's amazing.
And never looked back. And in
that's
about
amazing.
2 weeks after doing some work with a very traditional regimented program, the obsession just absolutely, And then it was about 2 years later, I had another day, somebody had passed away who was very dear to me. They committed suicide. And I was looking at having a drink, and I sat there for 2 hours looking at the drink, and I just walked away. Because I was like, this is ridiculous. This is just drama.
Wow.
So I just went back to doing my deal.
What a crazy, crazy story, and the things that you've experienced and have gone through to get to where you're at. But when you said that, the obsession was lifted, which is, again, another very important part to this. Can you talk about that process a little bit and what got you to that space?
I mean, I pushed through a really intense, regimented spiritual program, brutally honest. I know people use softer words, but I want to say brutal, like, tears, vomit. I'm just like realizing what's going on, running to the bathroom and just getting it out, and just admitting what my part in so many of the things that I had held grudges against other people and things, and just accepting also that life is life, and that I'm gonna, give it up. For me, it was rededicating my life back to God. And it was like, hey, I'm going to do this from now on. And even to this day, I roll out of bed. I don't get out of bed, and I get on my knees and I, give myself back to God every day for that day, so that I don't try to take back my will, because my willpower or whatever is the only thing that I have control over to give, so that somebody else can take control, because I did a really crummy job of controlling my life.
Wow. So on that, when did you decide to become a pastor, and when did that happen for you?
I was drafted. Yeah, I was ordained in 2015.
Okay.
By a group of pastors, and I was working on some Bible studies down in Dallas for a couple of years before, and they said, you do, and I was working with the homeless at that time, and hanging out under the bridges and doing ministry and recovery work. I had already gone back to school, had gotten a degree to be a substance abuse counselor. and worked for 4 years in a treatment center. And so they were like, you do what we don't do, and we don't want to do it, so we want to give you credentials to do it. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. And my best friend, I got two best friends besides my wife, and one of them says, you are the most irreverent reverend I have ever seen. So I kind of ran away from that for like 2 years, and it seemed like within about a month and a half, I was turned away 3 times from people's hospital rooms.
Wow.
Because I wasn't clergy and I wasn't family. You know, when those kind of privacy hospital situations occur, if you're not family and you're not clergy, you can't get in.
Wow.
So, you know, being somebody's coach or mentor or whatever title you want to put on it doesn't cut it. So I literally went down to the lobby. We still had payphones in those days. Yes, that is that old. And I picked up a payphone and I called this one pastor and I said, okay, I'm in. I give up. Because I knew that it was my calling to be in that room, and that once again, my self-will was in my ego of, well, I can't do this because I don't want to be one of them. And so it was, there was some time of studying and preparation. And of all the people that ordained me, there were 5 denominations, male and female. And so it was kind of a very ecumenical event, like people that normally wouldn't hang out on stage together, like we're there.
Wow. How cool.
Yeah. Plus my very first contribution to my ministry after getting ordained was from members of a Buddhist monastery across town.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy.
How
like,
cool.
Went home that night and had a message saying, hey, we couldn't make it, but here's $10,000.
Oh,
Start your ministry. We believe in what you're doing, so here you go. So it was, it was a God thing.
Yeah, it sounds like that. I mean, kind of what I'm taking away in a nutshell from this is going back to when you're, talking about the obsession being lifted to completely letting go, right? Because the best of our decision making keeps getting us back to those same places, and completely being completely honest in turning it over, letting go. And truly taking that guidance has allowed you to land where you're at. And I think that's really, it's fascinating, especially when you talk about the obsession lifted. It is a big part of it, for me at least, was that spiritual experience, right? And how he keeps working in your life. And it's very apparent that your calling is to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think to maybe with the obsession thing, to add to that, my best coaches and mentors and pastors in my life have taught me that wisdom is a combination of 3 things, and it's knowledge, experience, and your ability to take correction.
Ooh,
I like that.
If you don't have one of those 3 things, not only do you not have wisdom, but you are unstable. Try sitting on a stool that only has 2 legs.
Good luck.
Right.
that's fabulous. So what are the things you do today to live in the solution and maintain?
The last couple of months haven't allowed me as much time to read as I would like, but I'm in recovery. I am a voracious reader. If you could see my office, this is about 1/8 of the books.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those guys that think, knowledge is part of the experience. And so, I am a reader. I have very intense daily devotional times. Mm-hmm. That devotional time has obviously music. It has some independent devotional materials, and then Bible studies as well. And living in the solution requires me to help others as a way of life, not just a hobby on Saturday afternoons.
That's awesome.
It's important. It's important. Service is one of the biggest elements to my sobriety.
Yeah. So when people relapse, and I take them through maybe what set them off or whatever, not a single person ever in my 16, 17 years of recovery, I mean almost 16 years of continuous sobriety this time, I've never heard somebody say, well, I was really doing service work all the time and this, that, and the other thing. Never had it happen.
Wow.
Never, ever have I had somebody that was dedicating a healthy portion of their life or sobriety to service work and still relapse.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, 100%. 100%. So if you were to give our listeners an action for the day, something for them to take away, what would that be?
It's a trust God thing. That's where it all starts. The other two things that I would suggest are all in trusting God.
I love that.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about Bring the Light Ministries?
I would love to. So Bring the Light Ministries has 2 points in time, in the timeline of my sobriety, that are like major benchmarks. The first one being about 45 days into sobriety. Some people that were around me that had been sober for 20, 30, 40 years pulled me aside and said, hey man, you're getting all squirrely. That's a highly scientific and spiritual religious term, getting squirrely. They said, you need to go out and help somebody. And so I was like Mr. Excuse. And so I reached it in, and they said, hey, you should go do that feeding the homeless thing that you're always talking about. Because even at that time, Jay, I was wanting to do something like that. And so I reached into my pocket and I had $3.18, which, by the way, 318 is the name of one of our 2 318 outreaches, the secular version of the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I said, I can't do it. I don't have any money. And they're like, okay, well, we'll fix that. Everybody chipped in. I went out and bought 20 tacos. They were 99 cents at Taco Bell and went down and fed the homeless.
Wow.
And so every time I felt crummy, guess what I did? I'd go bum a bunch of money off of people or get them, cash in. We used to cash in coins and soda cans. You could just put them in the machine and then you get some. So I'd go buy 20 tacos or 5 tacos and just go help somebody. And so that progressed over the years. And when I was ordained, then it really kicked in. We started doing a half a dozen events every year, feeding 500 to 600 people, setting up buffets, feeding the homeless and the needy in South Dallas. I met my wife. We started to see each other in 2018. Our very first date, she came over and helped me clean out my storage unit to organize all the canned goods that I had. I asked her to marry me. We got married in 2019 of May 11th.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our first date night as a married couple, we cooked 20 meals and went out and fed the homeless. 20 became 50. And so that was the second big benchmark. And 50 became 150. And we're just doing it out of our kitchen. So January 20th, we closed. We bought an abandoned nursing home in East Dallas. We're going to remodel it, and it'll be a 2.5-year program for people to come, 70 people, 10 live-in staff to get vocational training. It'll be traditional spiritual recovery program coupled with good, solid spiritual biblical teachings.
You're really creating a really an amazing opportunity for people to reset and restructure their life, to have an opportunity to become an active member back in society.
I had men in my life that, my brain was mush when I came. You smoke crack on the street for 2 years and stay drunk, your brain is going to be mush. And I had forgotten all of the life skills I had. And if it wasn't for those men willing to roll up their sleeves and, help me get re-educated with a serious support structure, this has all of the elements that currently exist in separate organizations, but it's all going to be under one roof in a group housing residential setting so that people can get healing.
Wow. Well, if people want to find out more about what it is that you're doing and find out more about the organization, where can they go?
They can go to Bring the Light, LIGHT.org. Our catchphrase is, some bring the rain, we bring the light.
I love it. I love it, man. Well, that is
Earl.
amazing, and just so grateful for the work that you're doing. And it's obvious that God's working in your life, man, and making a difference. And I worked on Skid Row. I was on the board for Los Angeles Mission for many, many years. So I know the work that you're doing, and it's incredible. It's incredible. I'll definitely be looking at it to check it out and see if there's anything that we can do. And I just appreciate your testimony, appreciate the work you're doing, and keep giving back, man. It's paying off.
Thank you.
It's a great life. And we need volunteers too. We need hands and feet. There are always 2 weekends. We have 2 teams, a 10:30 team and a 12:30 team. We always need people. We need the hands and we need the feet. Come for a couple hours. You don't have to go out if you don't want to.
Yeah, guys, if you're in the Dallas area, make sure you reach out, check out, be of service. Check out their organization.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor Earl. I'm so glad we were able to have you on today. And thank you for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for having me, and thank you guys for staying sober and doing the good work that y'all do.
All right, guys, thanks again for listening to another episode of Let the Journey Begin.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Also, to learn more about the Red Songbird Foundation, visit us at www.redsongbird.org. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.